In the quiet town of Willow Creek, where the snow fell softly like a gentle whisper, lived a boy named Eli. The world around him was cold and still that winter, but inside Eli's small, faded yellow house, there was an even deeper kind of cold. It wasn't the chill of the weather, it was the quiet loneliness that filled the rooms, wrapping itself around Eli like a heavy blanket. Eli was only 9 years old, but his eyes told a story much older. His mother had passed away the year before, and since then, his father seemed like a ghost, always distant, always busy, always somewhere else in his mind. School was no easier. The other children laughed and played, but Eli often sat alone. Not because he wanted to be alone, but because no one seemed to notice the quiet boy sitting by himself, watching the world go by on one chilly afternoon. Eli sat on the porch steps, staring out at the white blanket of snow covering the ground. His breath made tiny clouds in the cold air. The world felt empty, and so did his heart. Well, he had no one to talk to, no one to call a friend. Then at the edge of the woods near his house, something moved. A small, scruffy shape appeared between the trees. It was a dog. Not a big, strong dog, but a thin, dirty one, with tangled fur and eyes that shone with something fierce and wild. One of his ears was torn, and his ribs showed through his coat. Yet despite his rough appearance, the dog's eyes were kind. Eli didn't move. He just watched as the dog took a cautious step closer. The dog's nose twitched in the cold air, and it looked at Eli like it had found something familiar, a small piece of hope, without saying a word. Eli reached into his backpack and pulled out a half-eaten sandwich. He held it out slowly, almost afraid the dog might run away, but the dog didn't run. It sniffed the sandwich gently, then took it carefully from Eli's hand. The dog's tail gave a small, hopeful wag. Eli smiled for the first time in a long while. It was a tiny smile, but it meant everything. He looked at the dog and whispered, "Rust." Rust, that's what Eli decided to call him, because of the rusty red patches in his fur. From that day on, Rust came back. Every afternoon after school, Eli would find him waiting by the porch or by the school gate. Rust never tried to come inside the house. He seemed to understand that was a place he wasn't allowed, but his presence was enough. Eli would sit on the steps, and Rust would lie quietly at his feet, their company filling a space that had been empty for so long. Rust was more than a dog to Eli. He was a friend who listened without talking, who stayed without asking why. When Eli felt the heaviness of sadness, Rust was there, his warm body pressed against Eli's cold hands. When Eli felt invisible at school, Rust was the one waiting, his golden eyes full of trust. In the evenings, Eli would tell Rust about his day. He told him about the quiet classroom, about the way the other kids didn't notice him, about the empty chair at dinner. Rust listened. No judgment, no questions, just loyalty and love. For Eli, Rust became a beacon in a dark, lonely world. He was the first bright spot in a long time, a reminder that even in the hardest moments, someone could care. And Rust had found someone to love too. In that quiet yellow house on the edge of the woods, a boy and a stray dog began to heal together. Two lost souls finding strength in the simple act of being there for each other. Spring was supposed to bring warmth and new beginnings to Willow Creek. But for Eli and Rust, it brought something much harder, a night that would change everything. The days grew longer, and the snow melted away, revealing muddy paths and budding trees. Eli and Rust had grown even closer. Every afternoon, Rust waited by the porch, his tail wagging the moment he saw Eli step outside. They shared secret moments, silent conversations, and a comfort neither had known before. But one night, dark clouds rolled in, heavy and angry. The wind picked up, howling like a wild animal through the branches of the trees. Thunder rumbled deep and loud, shaking the windows in the yellow house. Lightning flashed, painting the sky with bright, jagged lines. It was a storm unlike any Eli had ever seen. Rust was afraid. He paced nervously by the porch, his ears flat against his head, whining softly. The thunder was terrifying, the rain cold and sharp as it pounded the ground. Eli wanted to help. He wrapped a thin blanket around Rust's shivering body and sat beside him, whispering calm words. He barely felt himself, "It's okay, Rust. I'm here. You're safe." But Eli's father had made it clear, no animals inside the house. The rule was strict, and Eli knew better than to argue. So Rust stayed outside that night, curled up on the porch beneath the cold sky, wrapped in that small, worn blanket. Eli stayed close, holding on to Rust's collar, feeling helpless as the storm raged on. Lightning cracked dangerously close, and the wind tore through the trees with a fury that seemed unstoppable. Then, in the middle of the night, something happened. The wind grew stronger, ripping away the old wooden boards that covered the porch steps. The rain flooded the yard. Rust, frightened and confused, slipped out into the darkness. Eli searched. He called Rust's name again and again, his voice breaking through the roar of the storm. But Rust was gone. Morning came, gray and cold, but without the storm. Eli ran through the woods, down the muddy roads, and past the empty fields, desperate to find Rust. He asked neighbors, but no one had seen the dog. He looked behind every tree, every fence, every shadow. Days passed. Eli's hope began to fade. Some people said Rust probably ran away. Others whispered that maybe he was hurt, or worse. But Eli refused to believe it. Still, the house felt empty. The porch steps were bare, no soft fur curled up in the morning sun. The quiet returned Dan with it, the heavy loneliness, Eli thought. He had left behind. Without Rust, the world felt colder, darker. Every evening, Eli sat where Rust used to wait. He held Rust's old blanket tight, breathing in the faint scent of fur and earth. He told Rust stories, hoping the wind might carry them back to his friend. He told Rust about the days he spent at school, the sadness he still carried, and how much he missed him. Rust had become more than just a dog. He was Eli's family, his protector, his light in a world that often felt too big and too empty now. Without Rust, Eli's heart ached in a way he didn't know how to fix. But deep inside, a tiny spark of hope still burned. Somewhere out there, Rust was alive. Somewhere out there, Rust was waiting to come home. Eli promised himself he would find him again, no matter what it took. Rust's world had changed overnight. After slipping away from the storm, the frightened dog was caught by the animal control officer and taken far from Willow Creek. He was locked behind cold metal bars in a small, noisy shelter in a town 3 miles away, place full of barking dogs, strange smells, and harsh voices. Rust didn't understand where he was or why he was there. Days passed. Rust refused to eat. He lay on the cold floor, his eyes searching the empty room as if hoping to see Eli's familiar face. No matter how hungry or tired he was, Rust's heart beat only for the boy who had shown him kindness when no one else did. Every sound reminded him of the quiet house, the porch steps, the warmth of a small hand. But hope was hard to hold on to in a place like that. One evening, a careless worker left the shelter gate open. Rust saw his chance. With a desperate burst of energy, he slipped out into the night. The cold air hit his face, and the world felt huge and unknown. Rust didn't hesitate. He ran through dark streets, over cracked sidewalks, across busy roads where cars screeched and horns blared. His paws were sore, his body weak, but something deeper inside pushed him forward. Love. Loyalty. The memory of Eli's gentle voice. He passed fields that stretched like endless oceans, creek beds that whispered secrets, and towns that smelled strange but familiar, all the same. Rust's body ached, and the cold bit into his thin coat, but he never stopped. Every step was a promise to himself, to Eli, that he would come home. On the third day, Rust nearly gave up. His legs trembled and hunger made his vision blur. A truck sped past him too close, nearly crushing him. He barely escaped by jumping into a ditch, his heart pounding like thunder. But Rust pushed through the pain. Every scar and scrape on his body told the story of his journey. He wasn't just running. He was fighting for a love that no storm, no cage, no fear could break. Finally, after what felt like an endless journey, Rust saw the familiar trees of Willow Creek. The smell of pine and earth filled the air. He limped through the woods, each step heavier but filled with hope. He was almost home. Meanwhile, back in the yellow house, Eli hadn't stopped hoping either. Each morning he scanned the horizon. Each night he whispered Rust's name into the quiet dark. He believed in the impossible, that Rust was out there, fighting to find him. And now, on a soft spring morning, as the first light painted the sky, in shades of pink and gold, Rust stumbled from the trees and stood at the edge of the yard. He was dirty and tired, but his eyes shone brighter than ever before. Rust's courage had brought him back. The morning sun spilled golden light over Willow Creek, painting the quiet streets in soft warmth. Birds chirped in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. The world seemed peaceful, but Eli's heart still carried a silent ache. Every day since Rust disappeared, Rizzy sat on the porch steps, staring out at the empty yard, hoping for a sign. The cold loneliness that had once filled his house had returned, pressing down on his small shoulders. He clutched Rust's old blanket, worn and soft, and whispered the dog's name like a prayer. "Rust," he said quietly, his voice trembling, "please come home." Eli's father watched from the window, his face shadowed with worry. He saw the boy's silent waiting, the quiet sadness that no words could fix. But he didn't know how to reach Eli, how to bring back the light in his eyes. Then, suddenly, movement caught Eli's attention. A shape appeared at the edge of the yard, stumbling from the trees like a ghost from a dream. It was a dog, thin, dirty, with ragged fur and one torn ear. Eli's breath caught. Could it be Rust? He whispered, hardly daring to believe. The dog stopped, ears perked up, eyes wide and shining with recognition. Then, with a burst of energy that surprised them both, Rust ran limping, but fast straight into Eli's waiting arms. Eli dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Rust licked his cheeks, whining with joy and relief. It was as if the world righted itself in that moment. All the fear, the pain, the endless waiting, they vanished into the warm embrace of reunion. Rust's courage. His journey had led him home. The neighbors peeked from behind curtains, smiling softly as they saw the boy and his dog reunited. In the yellow house, Eli's father finally opened the door and stepped outside. Seeing something he hadn't seen in a long time, his son's radiant smile. That night, Rust slept inside. Wrapped in warm blankets, he curled up beside Eli's bed, their breathing slow and steady in the quiet dark. Eli's loneliness was gone. In Rust's steady presence, he found hope, comfort, and a love that no storm or distance could break. Their bond was unshakable. Moral of the story: true loyalty knows no distance, and love always finds its way home. Even the lost will return, if someone waits with an open heart.